scent of your arousal is driving me insane." Sarah's hand froze between her trembling thighs, her eyes flying open in the darkness. She thought Dante was asleep across the cave, thought she could ease the burning heat quietly without him knowing. She was wrong. His voice cut through the firelit shadows, rough and strained with barely contained need. And when she turned her head, his eyes gleamed pure silver, watching her with an intensity that made her core clench with fresh need. "Don't stop," he commanded, his alpha authority washing over her like a physical touch. "Keep touching yourself. Let me watch you. Show me how you pleasure yourself when you think no one is looking." Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. But that moment of surrender, of complete vulnerability and trust, came only after Sarah Whitlock had lost everything she'd ever known. Only after she'd been broken down to nothing and rebuilt into something the world had never seen coming. Only after the worst night of her life became the doorway to her greatest transformation. 3 months earlier, she had been nobody. An outcast, a defect, cursed. Now she was about to become a legend. But first, she had to survive the rejection that would shatter her world into 1,000 irreparable pieces. Sarah had always known she was different. From the moment she'd been old enough to understand the whispers that followed her through the Silver Mist Pack compound, she'd known that her white hair and pale skin marked her as something other, something wrong. Albinism, the healers called it, a genetic quirk that stripped all pigment from her features, leaving her looking like a ghost among the normal wolves who surrounded her. Hair the color of fresh snow, skin so pale it was almost translucent in certain light, eyes that shifted between silver and the faintest pink depending on the angle of the sun. The pack called it a curse. Sarah had spent 23 years trying to prove them wrong. 23 years of working harder than anyone else, of being kinder, more helpful, more willing to take on the tasks no one else wanted. She gathered herbs for Elder Miriam, the pack healer, hiking miles into the deep forest to find the rare plants that only grew in shadowed places. She helped Grandmother Rose tend the pack's youngest children when their parents were busy with pack business. She never complained, never caused trouble, never gave anyone a reason to remember she was the cursed one, except they always remembered anyway. She lived with her grandmother in a small cabin at the very edge of pack territory, not quite exiled, but not quite included either. A careful distance that allowed the pack to pretend she didn't exist most of the time. Rose Whitlock had raised Sarah since she was 3 years old after Sarah's parents had died in a rogue attack on the northern border. Rose never spoke much about Sarah's mother and father, but sometimes Sarah caught her grandmother staring at her with eyes full of secrets and sorrow. The cabin was comfortable enough, 2 rooms, a fireplace that burned through the cold mountain winters, shelves lined with dried herbs, and Grandmother Rose's extensive collection of journals. Sarah had read every single one of them, learning about pack history, about healing, about the old ways that most modern wolves had forgotten. Sometimes late at night when the fire burned low and her grandmother was already asleep, Sarah would read the oldest journals, the ones that spoke of legends and myths, of Luna-blessed Omegas who had walked the earth centuries ago, marked by the moon goddess herself wielding power that made even the strongest alphas kneel. Fairy tales, Sarah had always thought. Beautiful stories, but nothing more. She never imagined those stories might have anything to do with her. The Silver Mist Pack had 217 members. Sarah knew because she'd counted them all at the last full moon gathering. 217 wolves, and not one of them had ever looked at her with anything warmer than pity or colder than disgust. Except Gavin Thorne. Gavin was the son of Alpha Thorne, the pack leader who had ruled Silver Mist for the past 30 years. At 29 years old, Gavin was everything an alpha should be. Tall and powerfully built, with the kind of masculine beauty that made Omegas sigh when he passed. Dark hair, strong features, eyes that gleamed amber gold when his wolf rose close to the surface. He'd been trained since childhood to take over the pack when his father eventually stepped down. And Sarah, foolish, desperate, Sarah had been in love with him since she was 16 years old. She knew it was hopeless, knew that someone like Gavin would never look twice at someone like her. But the heart wants what it wants, and Sarah's heart had fixated on the one wolf in the entire pack who represented everything she could never have. She'd watched him from a distance for 7 years. Watched him train with the pack warriors, his body moving with a grace and power that made her breath catch. Watched him laugh with his friends, easy and confident in a way she could never be. Watched him flirt with the pretty Omega girls who clustered around him like flowers seeking the sun. He'd never once flirted with Sarah. He'd barely even acknowledged her existence. Until the night of his 29th birthday, when pack tradition demanded that any alpha who had found their fated mate must either accept or reject the bond before the assembled pack. Sarah had not expected to be anywhere near that ceremony. She'd planned to stay home with Grandmother Rose as she always did during major pack gatherings. Her presence made people uncomfortable. Better to stay away and let them celebrate without the reminder of the cursed one lurking in the shadows. But Grandmother Rose had insisted. "You need to go," the old woman had said, her weathered hands gentle, as she'd braided Sarah's white hair into an intricate pattern. "Trust me, child, you need to be there tonight." Sarah had not understood, had not wanted to attend, but she'd learned long ago not to argue when her grandmother got that particular look in her eyes. The look that said Rose knew something Sarah didn't. The look that meant there was more happening beneath the surface than Sarah could see. So she'd gone to the gathering, wearing her simplest dress, keeping to the very back of the crowd where the shadows were deepest, and no one would have to look directly at her. The full moon hung heavy and bright overhead, illuminating the central clearing where the pack had assembled. Lanterns flickered between the trees, casting dancing shadows across the faces of wolves, both young and old. The air smelled of pine and earth and the wild magic that always seemed to hum through the forest on nights like this. Alpha Thorn stood on a raised platform, his presence commanding even though age had begun to silver his hair and line his face. Beside him stood Gavin, looking every inch the future leader. Confident, strong, perfect. Sarah's heart had ached just looking at him. The ceremony began with the traditional words, Alpha Thorn's voice carrying across the clearing with the weight of authority and history. "Tonight we gather under the full moon to witness my son Gavin's 29th year. By our laws and traditions, this is the night when any alpha who has discovered their fated mate must make their choice known, to accept the bond the moon goddess has forged, or to reject it and wait for the possibility of a chosen mate." Sarah barely listened. She'd heard these words at other ceremonies. They had nothing to do with her. But then something shifted. A feeling, a pull, like an invisible thread connecting her heart to something across the clearing. She gasped, hand flying to her chest as warmth bloomed there. Warmth and recognition and a rightness that she'd never felt before in her entire life. The mate bond it was trying to form. With her. Sarah's eyes flew to Gavin's face across the distance, and she saw the exact moment he felt it too. Saw his body go rigid, his expression shifting from confident to shocked to horrified in the span of a single heartbeat. Their eyes met across the crowd, and Sarah saw nothing but disgust in his gaze. No, this couldn't be happening. The moon goddess couldn't be this cruel, couldn't give Sarah the one thing she'd secretly dreamed of and then make it so obvious that Gavin wanted nothing to do with it. The crowd had started to murmur, sensing something happening, but not understanding what. Gavin stepped forward, his voice ringing out clear and cold across the clearing. "I, Gavin Thorn, future alpha of Silver Mist Pack, reject the mate bond attempting to form with Sarah Whitlock." The words hit her like physical blows. Gasps rippled through the assembled wolves. Heads turned searching for her in the crowd, finding her, staring. But Gavin wasn't finished. "Her albinism is a genetic defect," he continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the clearing, making sure everyone heard, making sure there would be no doubt, no possibility of misunderstanding. "Our bloodline has been pure for 12 generations. I will not contaminate it with her cursed blood. She is unworthy to stand beside an alpha, unworthy to bear alpha heirs, unworthy of the bond the goddess mistakenly tried to forge." Each word was a knife, each syllable a fresh wound. Sarah felt the mate bond struggling to complete itself, felt it reaching for Gavin with desperate, hungry need. And then she felt him slam it away with such force that it shattered. The pain was indescribable, like her chest had been ripped open, like her heart had been torn out while it was still beating, like every nerve ending in her body was screaming in agony. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stand there in the shadows while the entire pack stared at her with pity or satisfaction or carefully blank expressions. Grandmother Rose was suddenly beside her, arms wrapping around Sarah's trembling body. But even her grandmother's embrace couldn't stop the pain, couldn't stop the feeling of something fundamental and irreplaceable breaking inside her. "I'm sorry," Rose whispered, her voice thick with tears. "I'm so sorry, child. I thought he might be different. Thought the bond might make him see." But Gavin hadn't seen anything except a defect he wanted no part of. Sarah wanted to run, wanted to disappear into the forest and never come back. But her body wouldn't cooperate. She stood frozen, watching as the pack returned their attention to Gavin, watching as he was congratulated for his strong decision, for protecting the bloodline, for not letting misplaced sentiment cloud his judgment. No one approached Sarah. No one offered comfort beyond her grandmother's arms. They avoided her eyes as if rejection might be contagious. The ceremony continued. Other wolves celebrated. Music started playing. But Sarah heard none of it through the roaring in her ears. She didn't know how long she stood there. Minutes. Hours. Time had lost all meaning in the face of the worst pain she'd ever experienced. Finally, Grandmother Rose guided her home through the dark forest paths, got her into bed, pressed a cup of tea into her shaking hands. "Drink this," Rose murmured. "It will help with the pain." Sarah drank because she didn't have the energy to refuse. The tea tasted bitter like herbs and sorrow. It didn't help. Nothing could help the feeling of her heart shattering into pieces that could never be put back together. She lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling, while Grandmother Rose sat beside her, one weathered hand stroking Sarah's white hair. "The goddess has a plan," Rose whispered. "I know it doesn't feel like it now, but she does. This rejection, as terrible as it is, might be the very thing that saves you." Sarah didn't respond, didn't have words for the devastation consuming her from the inside out. She finally fell into fitful sleep as dawn approached, her dreams filled with amber eyes looking at her with disgust. When she woke late the next morning, her grandmother was already up, moving around the cabin with unusual urgency. "You need to pack," Rose said without preamble. "The Elder Council met at dawn. They've invoked the old law." Sarah's blood went cold. "What old law?" "The law of rejection," Rose said, her voice heavy with sorrow. "Any Omega who is rejected by her fated mate must leave pack territory within 24 hours. It's meant to spare both parties the pain of proximity. To allow clean breaks." "They're exiling me." Sarah's voice came out small and broken. "I'm sorry, child. I argued against it, pleaded with them. But the law is the law, and the council voted unanimously." Rose's hands shook as she pulled a worn pack from the closet. "You have until tomorrow at dawn. After that, if you're still within Silver Mist territory, the pack warriors have permission to remove you by force." The world tilted sideways, rejected and exiled within 12 hours. Sarah had known she was unwanted, had spent her entire life being reminded of it. But this was different. This was final, absolute. There would be no coming back from this. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "North," Grandmother Rose said firmly. "Travel north toward the border territories. There are packs there who are less rigid about bloodlines, who might accept a lone Omega. I've never left pack territory before. I don't know how to survive out there." "You're stronger than you know," Rose said, cupping Sarah's face in both hands. "You've survived 23 years of this pack's cruelty. You'll survive this too." Sarah wanted to believe her, wanted to find some core of strength to cling to, but all she felt was emptiness where the mate bond should have been. A gaping wound that would never fully heal. She packed in a daze, a change of clothes, the warmest cloak she owned. Grandmother Rose's oldest journal pressed into her hands with whispered instructions to read it when she felt lost. The small bag of moonflower seeds she'd been collecting for years, each one precious and rare. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. Elder Miriam came by in the afternoon, her lined face etched with sympathy. She pressed a bundle into Sarah's hands. "Food for 3 days," she said quietly, glancing over her shoulder as if afraid of being seen helping the cursed one. "Medical supplies, a blanket. It's not much, but it's what I can spare." "Thank you," Sarah whispered, throat tight. Miriam squeezed her hand. "The goddess has a plan, child. Trust in her even when the path seems darkest." It was the same thing Grandmother Rose had said. Sarah wanted to believe it, wanted to think there was some greater purpose to this suffering. But mostly she just felt abandoned. By the goddess, by her pack, by the mate who was supposed to love her, but had rejected her instead. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation and grief. Grandmother Rose helped her pack, both of them moving in silence, broken only by the occasional sob from the old woman. "I wish I could go with you," Rose said as evening approached, "but I'm too old for the journey. I'd only slow you down." "It's okay," Sarah lied. Nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat by the fireplace watching the flames dance, trying to memorize every detail of the only home she'd ever known. The worn wooden floors, the dried herbs hanging from the rafters, the faded quilts on the furniture, Grandmother Rose's collection of journals lining the shelves. This cabin had been her sanctuary, her refuge from a pack that had never wanted her. Now even that was being taken away. At dawn, Grandmother Rose walked with her to the pack boundary. The old woman's face was wet with tears, but her spine was straight with dignity. "Remember who you are," Rose said, embracing Sarah one final time. "Not what they say you are. who you truly are in your heart. I don't know who that is anymore, Sarah admitted. You will, Rose promised. The journey ahead will show you. Sarah stepped across the boundary marker just as the sun crested the horizon. Stepped out of silver mist territory for the first time in her life. She didn't look back. Couldn't bear to see her grandmother standing there alone. Couldn't bear to see the packed compound in the distance where Gavin Thorne was probably still sleeping peacefully unbothered by the Omega he'd destroyed. The forest swallowed her quickly, dense pine trees blocking out most of the early morning light. The ground soft with decades of fallen needles. The air sharp with the scent of sap and earth. Sarah walked north because Grandmother Rose had told her to, because she had no other direction to go. She had no plan beyond surviving, no destination in mind, just one foot in front of the other, moving farther from everything she'd ever known. The first day wasn't terrible. The weather held clear and cool. She followed game trails when she could find them, pushing through underbrush when she couldn't, ate sparingly from the food Elder Miriam had provided. Tried not to think about the fact that she was completely alone in the wilderness she'd never navigated before. She tried not to think about Gavin's face twisted with disgust. Tried not to think about the mate bond that should have been the most beautiful thing in her life, but had instead become her greatest source of pain. Tried not to think about anything except the next step forward. That night, she made camp in a small clearing, building a fire from techniques Grandmother Rose had taught her years ago. She wrapped herself in the blanket Elder Miriam had provided and tried to sleep despite the unfamiliar sounds of the deep forest. Wolves howling in the distance. Not pack wolves, wild ones, or worse, rogues. She told herself she was safe, told herself no one would bother with a lone Omega who clearly had nothing worth stealing. She was wrong. On the third day, when she'd gone through most of her food and was beginning to panic about what she'd do when it ran out, Sarah made a critical mistake. She slipped while crossing a stream swollen with recent rain. Her foot caught between two rocks. She went down hard, her ankle twisting with a sickening pop. The pain was immediate and intense. When she tried to stand, her leg gave out completely. Broken, or badly sprained at the very least. Sarah dragged herself to the stream bank, breathing hard through the agony, examined her ankle with shaking hands, already swelling, already turning dark with bruising. She couldn't walk, could barely put weight on it, and she was 3 days from pack territory with no way to call for help. Panic threatened to overwhelm her. She forced it down, forced herself to think. She had medical supplies in her pack, bandages, herbs for pain. She could splint the ankle rest for a day or two, then try to continue north. It wasn't a good plan, but it was the only plan she had. Sarah spent the rest of the day immobilized by pain and fear. She wrapped her ankle as best she could, chewed bitter willow bark to dull the worst of the agony, tried to ration the last of her food. As night fell, she heard the howling again. Closer this time, much closer. Sarah's blood went cold as she recognized the sound. Not wild wolves, not pack wolves either. Rogues, and they'd caught her scent. 3 of them emerged from the tree line as full dark settled over the forest, all in human form, but the predatory gleam in their eyes was pure animal. The largest one smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Well, well, he said, voice rough like gravel. What do we have here, a little Omega all alone in the big bad woods? Sarah tried to stand to run, to shift into her wolf form for the first time in her life. Nothing happened. Her wolf had never emerged before, had always been dormant no matter how hard she'd tried to coax it out. And now, when she needed it most, it remained stubbornly absent. She was helpless. The rogues advanced slowly, clearly enjoying her fear. Injured too, a second one observed, eyeing her bandaged ankle. Not going anywhere fast, are you, sweetheart? Please, Sarah heard herself saying, hating how weak she sounded. Please just let me go. I have nothing you want. The largest rogue laughed. Oh, I think you have exactly what we want. He lunged. Sarah screamed, and then the night exploded into violence as a massive black wolf came out of nowhere, slamming into the rogue with enough force to send him flying into a tree. The wolf was enormous, larger than any Sarah had ever seen. His fur was midnight black, his eyes gleaming amber gold in the moonlight. And he was absolutely lethal. The first rogue's throat was torn out before he could even scream. Blood sprayed across the forest floor in a dark arc. The second rogue tried to run. The black wolf hunted him down with terrifying efficiency, powerful jaws closing around the rogue's spine. One shake, the sickening crack of vertebrae breaking. The rogue went limp. The third rogue shifted into wolf form, trying to fight back. It was over in seconds. The black wolf was faster, stronger, more experienced. He fought with the precision of a trained warrior and the fury of an avenging angel. When the last rogue fell, the clearing went silent, except for Sarah's ragged breathing and the black wolf's low growl. The wolf turned to face her. For one terrifying moment, Sarah thought she'd simply traded one threat for another. But then the wolf shifted, and standing before her naked and splattered with rogue blood was the most beautiful man Sarah had ever seen. Tall and powerfully built, all lean muscle and masculine grace. Dark hair that looked black in the moonlight. Strong features that seemed carved from stone. And eyes that gleamed amber gold even in human form. Eyes that were looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch for entirely different reasons than fear. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice rough but not unkind. Sarah couldn't speak, could only stare at him as her heart raced for reasons that had nothing to do with the attack she'd just survived. He moved closer, crouching beside her to examine her ankle with surprisingly gentle hands. "Sprained badly," he said after a moment. "Maybe fractured. You need medical attention." "Who are you?" Sarah finally managed. He looked up at her and something flickered in those amber eyes. Recognition, awareness, the kind of pull that Sarah had felt once before with Gavin. No, it couldn't be, not again. Not after everything she just survived. But the warmth blooming in her chest told her what her mind refused to accept. The mate bond was trying to form, again, with this stranger who just killed 3 rogues to save her life. His eyes widened slightly, and she knew he felt it too. "My name is Dante Ashford," he said quietly, "and you, little Omega, are either the luckiest or the unluckiest wolf I've ever met." Dante Ashford carried Sarah through the dark forest with a sureness that spoke of intimate knowledge of these woods. She should have been afraid, should have protested being swept into the arms of a complete stranger, blood still wet on his skin from the rogues he'd just killed. But the mate bond humming between them made trust feel instinctive, made his touch feel right in a way nothing else ever had. Her injured ankle throbbed with every step he took, but Sarah barely noticed the pain. She was too focused on the warmth of his bare chest against her side, the strength in the arms cradling her, the pine and smoke scent that seemed to wrap around her senses like a living thing. "Where are you taking me?" she asked, voice small in the vast darkness. "Somewhere safe," Dante replied, not breaking stride. "I have a refuge prepared, a cave system about a mile north of here. It's hidden, defensible, and has supplies. You were prepared for this. I've been tracking those rogues for 3 days. Knew they were hunting in this area. I set up a safe house just in case." His jaw tightened. "I didn't expect to find them stalking an injured Omega." Sarah fell silent, processing that information. He'd been hunting the rogues, had killed them without hesitation. This was not a soft male, not someone who solved problems with words. This was a warrior. They reached the cave entrance 15 minutes later. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a crack in the rock face barely wide enough for a wolf to squeeze through. But when Dante set her down carefully and pressed his hand to a specific spot on the stone, a section swung inward, revealing a much larger opening. "Inside," he said, quickly. Sarah limped through the entrance, Dante right behind her. He triggered some mechanism that sealed the entrance again, the rock blending seamlessly with the cave wall. Unless you knew exactly where to look, you'd never find it. The interior was surprisingly spacious, a natural cavern that opened up into a room easily 20 feet across. Supplies lined one wall in neat stacks: blankets, dried food, water containers, medical supplies, weapons. A fire pit sat in the center, a natural chimney overhead that would disperse smoke so it wouldn't be visible from outside. This wasn't just a hiding place. This was a bolt hole prepared by someone who understood survival and tactics. Dante moved to light the fire with practiced efficiency. The flames caught quickly, casting dancing shadows across the cave walls and illuminating the sharp planes of his face. He was still naked, still covered in blood, and Sarah couldn't stop looking at him. "Let me tend your ankle first," Dante said, kneeling beside her. "Then I'll explain everything." His hands were gentle as he unwrapped her makeshift bandage, examining the swollen joint with a healer's eye. Sarah hissed when he probed the worst of the bruising. "Definitely sprained," he confirmed, "but not broken. You're lucky." "Doesn't feel lucky," Sarah muttered. Something that might have been a smile flickered across his face. "No, I suppose not." He retrieved medical supplies from the stacks along the wall, returning with bandages, a splint, and several small vials. "This will hurt," he warned, uncorking one vial. "Arnica tincture. It'll reduce swelling and speed healing." He wasn't wrong. The tincture burned like liquid fire when he applied it. Sarah bit down hard on her lip to keep from crying out. Dante noticed. His hand moved to her knee thumb, stroking in small, soothing circles. "Breathe through it. The worst will pass in a moment." And it did. The burning faded to a deep ache, then to blessed numbness, as whatever herbs were in the tincture did their work. He wrapped her ankle with professional competence, creating a secure splint that immobilized the joint without cutting off circulation. "You've done this before," Sarah observed. "Many times." Dante sat back on his heels. "I was a tracker and warrior for my birth pack before I went rogue myself 6 months ago." "You're a rogue," Sarah's heart lurched. "Not the kind you're thinking of." He stood moving to a basin of water near the supplies, began washing the blood from his skin with efficient movements. "I left my pack voluntarily after my sister was killed. I've been hunting her murderers ever since." "The rogues who attacked me?" "Part of the same network, yes." Dante's voice went hard. 6 months ago, a pack called Western Ridge was attacked by rogues. Every single member was slaughtered. Men and women, children. Not one survivor. He turned to face her, water dripping from his hair, his eyes burning with banked fury. "My sister Emma lived there with her mate. She was 7 months pregnant with her first child. I was supposed to visit them that week. Was running late because I'd been delayed on pack business." His hands clenched into fists. "By the time I arrived, they were all dead. Emma, her mate, their unborn child. Everyone. The rogues had burned the compound to hide evidence, but I found tracks. Scents. Enough to start hunting." "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered. "I'm so sorry for your loss." Dante's expression softened slightly. "Thank you. Emma was the best of us. Kind, gentle, always seeing the good in people. She didn't deserve what happened to her." He pulled on pants from his supplies, finally covering himself. Sarah felt oddly disappointed. "I've been tracking this rogue network for 6 months." Dante continued, sitting across the fire from her. "Following their trail across 3 territories. They're not random killers. They're organized, efficient. Someone is hiring them to attack specific packs." "Why, that's what I'm trying to figure out." He leaned forward, firelight playing across his features. "Every pack they've hit has been small. Fewer than 300 members. Isolated, sitting on valuable territory. 12 packs in 18 months. All destroyed completely." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Silver Mist Pack has 217 members." Dante's eyes sharpened. "That's your pack." "Was my pack. I was exiled 3 days ago." The words tasted like ash. "But my grandmother is still there. Everyone I've ever known." "Why were you exiled?" The question was gentle, but Sarah still felt shame flood through her. "I was rejected by my fated mate. Pack law requires rejected Omegas to leave within 24 hours. She expected pity, disgust. The same reaction she'd gotten from everyone else. Instead, Dante's face darkened with anger. What kind of fool rejects his fated mate? The kind who thinks albinism is a genetic defect that will contaminate his pure bloodline. Sarah couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he said something that shocked her to her core. "Your coloring isn't a defect, it's a mark." "A mark of what?" "I'm not sure yet, but I've read the old texts, the ancient histories. There are stories of Omegas marked by the moon goddess herself, special bloodlines that surface once in a generation or less." He tilted his head, studying her. "Has your wolf ever emerged?" "No, never. I've tried for years." "Interesting." Dante's expression turned thoughtful. "Your wolf might be dormant for a reason, waiting for the right trigger." Before Sarah could ask what he meant, a different scent hit her awareness, coming from her own body. Sweet and thick and completely unmistakable. Heat. She was going into heat. Dante smelled it too. His pupils dilated, his nostrils flaring. Every line of his body went tense. "No," Sarah breathed. "No, this can't be happening. I'm not supposed to go into heat for another 2 months." "Trauma can trigger it early," Dante said, his voice rougher now. "The rejection, the exile, the attack. Your body is trying to seek an alpha for protection." He stood abruptly, putting distance between them. "This complicates things." "I'm sorry." Sarah felt tears burn behind her eyes. "I didn't know. I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize." Dante's voice was sharp. "This isn't your fault, but we need to address it quickly. An unmated Omega in heat puts out pheromones that will draw every alpha and rogue within miles. If any of them catch your scent, they'll come hunting." Sarah's panic must have shown on her face because Dante's expression softened. "I'm not going to hurt you, Sarah. I need you to understand that no matter how strong the biological imperative gets, I won't force anything on you." "Then what do we do?" "We have options." Dante ran a hand through his damp hair. "Option 1, I scent mark you. Cover you with my scent so other alphas think you're already claimed. It won't stop all of them, but it might make them hesitate. And option two, there is no option two that doesn't involve me claiming you fully, which I won't do while you're in heat and can't give clear consent. The mate bond pulled tight in Sarah's chest, urging her toward him. Her body was already responding to the heat, already craving his touch. But through the haze of biology, she recognized the honor in what he was saying. He could take her right now, could use the heat as justification. Most alphas would. But Dante Ashford was offering her a choice. Scent mark me, Sarah said. Please. If it keeps us safe, if it gives us a chance to survive this, then do it. Dante's jaw clenched. You need to understand what that entails. Scent marking requires skin-to-skin contact, extensive contact. My hands on your body, my scent rubbed into every place another alpha might smell you. Heat flooded Sarah's face and pulled low in her belly. I understand. It's going to make your heat worse. Physical contact from an alpha always does. I understand, Sarah repeated more firmly this time. Dante studied her for another long moment. Then he nodded. Come here. Sarah stood on her good leg, hopping awkwardly toward him. Dante closed the remaining distance, his hands gentle as they steadied her. Turn around, he commanded softly. Sarah obeyed, presenting her back to him. Her heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. I need access to your shoulders and neck, Dante said. May I remove your shirt? The fact that he asked permission even now made something warm bloom in Sarah's chest. Yes. His hands found the hem of her worn shirt, lifting it slowly over her head. Sarah wore nothing underneath, and suddenly she was bare from the waist up, standing in front of a male she'd known for less than an hour. She should have felt vulnerable, exposed. Instead, she felt safe. Dante's hands settled on her shoulders, warm and solid. The moment his skin met hers, sensation exploded through Sarah's body. Electric, overwhelming, every nerve ending suddenly alive and screaming for more. She gasped, unable to contain the sound. Easy, Dante murmured, his breath warm against her ear. I've got you, just breathe. His hands began to move, slow, deliberate strokes across her shoulders, down her arms, along her collarbone. He was methodical about it, making sure his scent covered every inch of exposed skin. But there was nothing clinical about Sarah's response. Heat pulled low in her belly, spreading like wildfire through her veins. Her thighs trembled. Her core ached with an emptiness that demanded to be filled. She could feel wetness gathering between her legs, evidence of her body's desperate readiness. Dante's hands moved to her throat, fingers wrapping carefully around the delicate column. His thumb pressed against her racing pulse point, and Sarah thought she might die from the intensity of it. This was the most intimate part of scent marking. The alpha's claim pressed directly over the omega's vulnerability, broadcasting to any other wolf that this omega was protected. Taken, not available. Sarah felt her body go liquid at the dominance of it, at the feeling of Dante's hand on her throat while his scent sank into her skin. She was completely at his mercy in this position, vulnerable in every possible way, and some primal part of her reveled in it. Please, she heard herself whimper. Dante, please. Please, what? His voice was strained, controlled only through massive effort. I don't know, I just need something, anything, it hurts. Dante made a low sound that might have been a growl or a groan. His hand tightened fractionally on her throat before releasing her entirely and stepping back. That's enough, he said, voice rough. You're thoroughly marked. Any wolf who comes near you will smell me and know to stay away. Sarah turned to face him, clutching her discarded shirt to her chest. Dante's eyes had gone pure silver, his wolf visible just beneath the surface. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. The heat will get worse before it gets better, he said. I need you to understand that. For the next 3 to 5 days, you're going to be in agony. Your body is going to demand an alpha's touch. My touch, specifically because of the mate bond. What can we do? I can give you partial relief. Dante's voice dropped lower. I can use my hands and mouth to bring you to release. It won't satisfy the heat completely, but it will take the edge off. Make it bearable. Sarah's entire body flushed hot at the image his words created. But, Dante continued firmly, I won't penetrate you, won't claim you fully, not while you're in heat. I need your consent to come from a clear mind, not from biology driving you to accept anyone who can ease the suffering. You wouldn't be just anyone, Sarah whispered. You're my mate. Am I? Dante's eyes searched hers. We've known each other for less than 2 hours, Sarah. The bond is pulling at both of us, but that doesn't mean you've chosen me. Doesn't mean you want this permanently. I was rejected by one mate already. Do you really think I'd risk that pain again by accepting a bond I didn't want? Something flickered in Dante's expression. Understanding. Respect. Fair point, he conceded. But my answer remains the same. I'll help you through the heat, but claiming can wait until you're thinking clearly. Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to demand he claim her, now end this aching need. But through the haze of heat, she recognized the wisdom in his restraint. This male was offering her something no one else ever had. Respect, agency, choice. Even when biology was screaming at both of them to just give in. Okay, she said softly, partial relief. Just help me survive this. Dante's control visibly cracked at her words. He closed the distance between them in two strides, one hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. I'm going to take care of you, he promised. Going to make it good for you, but you have to promise me something. Anything. If it becomes too much, if you need me to stop for any reason, you tell me immediately. Your comfort and consent matter more than my instincts. Understood. Understood. He kissed her then, not gentle or tentative, but claiming and hungry, and full of restrained need. His tongue swept into her mouth, tasting her, learning her. Sarah melted into the kiss, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders for balance. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Lay down, Dante commanded, gesturing to the blankets he'd spread near the fire. Sarah obeyed, her body trembling with anticipation and need. Dante followed her down, caging her body with his much larger frame. I'm going to worship every inch of you, he murmured against her throat. Going to learn exactly what makes you gasp and moan. Going to bring you to release so many times you forget what it feels like to ache. His hands found the waist of her pants, fingers working the fastening. May I thus? Yes, Sarah breathed. Yes, please. He removed her pants and undergarments in one smooth motion, leaving her completely bare before him. His eyes roamed over her body with an intensity that made her feel beautiful despite the insecurities she'd carried her entire life. Perfect, he said roughly. You're absolutely perfect, Sarah. Then his mouth was on her skin, trailing kisses down her throat, across her collarbone, over the curve of her breast. When his lips closed around one peaked tip, Sarah cried out at the sensation. He lavished attention on her breasts, his tongue circling and teasing until she was writhing beneath him. Then he moved lower, kissing down her stomach, her hip bones, the sensitive skin of her inner thighs. Dante, she gasped. What are you? His mouth closed over her core, and Sarah's mind went completely blank. The sensation was indescribable. His tongue working against her most sensitive places, finding nerves she didn't know existed. He licked and sucked and explored with single-minded focus, and Sarah could only lay there gasping his name. The pleasure built impossibly fast. Her virgin body was so sensitive from heat that it took almost nothing to push her toward the edge. When Dante slid one finger carefully inside her tight channel, Sarah shattered with a scream. The orgasm crashed through her in waves, her whole body convulsing with the force of it. Dante didn't stop, his tongue continuing its assault while his finger worked inside her, drawing out every last tremor of pleasure. When she finally came down, trembling and gasping, Dante kissed his way back up her body with clear satisfaction. Better, he asked. Sarah could only nod, too overwhelmed to form words. Good, because we're not done yet. He worked a second finger inside her, stretching her carefully while his thumb found that bundle of nerves at the apex of her thighs. The dual sensation sent Sarah climbing again, impossibly fast. That's it, Dante encouraged, his voice rough with his own barely contained need. Let go for me. Show me how beautiful you are when you come apart. She exploded again, this climax somehow even more intense than the first. Her body clamped down on his fingers, her back arching off the blankets. Dante held her through it, murmuring praise against her skin. So responsive, he said. So perfect. I could spend hours just watching you fall apart. Dante, Sarah gasped when she could finally speak again. What about you? Don't you need... This isn't about me, he interrupted gently. This is about getting you through your heat. My needs can wait. But Sarah could see the evidence of his arousal straining against his pants, could smell his desire thick in the air between them. That's not fair to you. Life rarely is. Dante withdrew his fingers carefully, then gathered her into his arms. Rest now. The heat will surge again in a few hours. We'll deal with it then. Sarah wanted to protest, wanted to insist she could help ease his suffering the way he'd eased hers. But exhaustion was already pulling at her. The combination of injury, heat, and multiple intense orgasms had drained every ounce of energy from her body. She curled into Dante's warmth, feeling safer than she had in days, maybe safer than she'd ever felt in her entire life. Thank you, she whispered against his chest. For what? For giving me a choice, for treating me like I matter. Dante's arms tightened around her. You do matter, Sarah, more than you know. She fell asleep to the sound of his heartbeat, steady and strong beneath her ear. When she woke, it was to darkness and heat surging through her body with renewed intensity. She was soaked with sweat despite the cool cave air. Her thighs were slick with arousal. Every nerve ending screamed for relief. Dante was exactly where he'd been when she fell asleep, still holding her. But his body was tense, his breathing controlled. How long was I asleep? Sarah asked. 3 hours. His voice was strained. Your heat spiked about 20 minutes ago. I've been trying not to wake you. I'm awake now. Sarah shifted in his arms, her hand sliding down his chest. She could feel the hard planes of muscle beneath her palm, could feel the way his body responded to even that innocent touch. Sarah, his hand caught her wrist gently. You don't have to. I want to, she interrupted. Please, Dante. I need you. Need your hands on me again. Need to feel something other than this burning. His control shattered. Dante flipped their positions in one smooth motion, pinning her beneath him. His mouth found hers in a kiss that was all hunger and desperation and barely restrained need. Tell me if it's too much, he growled against her lips. Tell me if you need me to stop. Don't stop, Sarah gasped. Please don't stop. His hands were everywhere, touching, claiming, learning every curve and valley of her body. His mouth followed trailing fire across her skin. When his fingers slid inside her again, Sarah was already so wet that he encountered no resistance. He worked her with skilled precision, finding that spot inside that made her see stars. Come for me, he commanded. Let me feel you fall apart again. Sarah obeyed, her body no longer her own to control. The orgasm ripped through her with devastating intensity. But it wasn't enough. The heat demanded more, demanded completion, demanded the feeling of him inside her, filling the aching emptiness. I need you, Sarah heard herself begging. Please, Dante, I need all of you. I can't take this anymore. Sarah, I know what I'm asking. I know what it means, and I'm choosing this, choosing you. Please. Dante's eyes were pure molten silver now, his wolf completely present, fighting for control against the mate bond and her heat and his own desperate need. If we do this, he said roughly, there's no going back. The mate bond will lock into place. It's permanent, for life. I know. You're in heat. You can't think clearly. I can think clearly enough to know that you're my mate. Sarah cupped his face in both hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. To know that you've treated me with more kindness and respect in a few hours than my entire pack showed me in 23 years. To know that I trust you with my life and my body and my heart. Something shifted in Dante's expression, the last of his restraint crumbling. Are you absolutely certain? Yes, Sarah pulled him down for a kiss. Yes, I'm certain. Claim me, Dante. Make me yours. The growl that rumbled from his chest was purely animal. He stripped off his remaining clothes with urgent efficiency, and then he was settling between her thighs, the thick length of him pressing against her entrance. This is going to hurt at first, he warned, his voice rough. You're a virgin. Your body has never taken an alpha before. I trust you to be gentle. I'll try. His hand cupped her face tenderly, even as his body trembled with the effort of holding still. But I'm barely holding on, Sarah. Once I start, I don't know if I'll be able to go slow. Then don't go slow. Just make me yours. Dante pushed inside with one firm thrust, breaking through the barrier of her virginity and seating himself fully inside her in one motion. The pain was sharp and immediate. Sarah cried out, her body tensing around the intrusion. Dante went completely still, buried to the hilt inside her. Breathe, he commanded gently. Just breathe through it. The pain will fade. And it did. Her body adjusting to accommodate his size, the burn gradually transforming into something else entirely. Fullness, completion, rightness. Move, Sarah gasped. Please move. Dante pulled back slowly, then thrust forward again, establishing a rhythm that was careful at first, giving her time to adjust. But Sarah didn't want careful. She wrapped her legs around his waist, urging him deeper. Harder, she demanded. I need it harder. His control finally broke completely. Dante's thrust became powerful, driving deep, claiming her thoroughly. Sarah met him, stroke for stroke, her body arching to take him as deep as possible. The pleasure built to impossible heights, different from the orgasms he'd given her earlier. Deeper, more intense, more complete. Dante, she sobbed. I'm going to. Come for me, he growled. Come on, my not Omega. Let me feel you. She hadn't even realized his knot was forming, swelling at the base of his length, stretching her impossibly wide. It's too much, Sarah gasped. I can't. You can. Dante's hand found that sensitive bundle of nerves circling with devastating precision. Your body was made for this, made to take me. Relax and let me in. With one final deep thrust, his knot pushed inside her fully and locked them together. The sensation triggered both their releases simultaneously. Sarah screamed as the most powerful orgasm of her life crashed through her. Wave after wave of pleasure so intense it bordered on pain. She could feel Dante pulsing inside her, filling her, marking her from the inside out. And then his teeth sank into her throat right over her scent gland, and the mate bond snapped into place with the force of a lightning strike. Golden light exploded behind Sarah's eyelids. She could suddenly feel everything Dante felt. His love, his desire, his overwhelming relief at finally completing the bond. His protective instincts roaring to life, his wolf claiming her as his and his alone. And he could feel her trust, her acceptance, her growing love. Her relief at finding someone who valued her joy at finally belonging to someone who wanted her back. Mine, Dante growled against her throat. You're mine now, Sarah, forever. Yours, Sarah agreed, tears streaming down her face from the intensity of it all. Always yours. They stayed locked together for long minutes, both processing the magnitude of what they'd just done. When Dante's knot finally began to soften, he carefully pulled out and gathered her into his arms. How do you feel? He asked softly. Complete, Sarah whispered. For the first time in my life, I feel complete. Dante kissed her forehead. The heat should ease now that we're bonded. Your body got what it was demanding. And he was right. The burning desperation that had consumed her for hours was fading to manageable levels. Still present, but no longer overwhelming. Rest, Dante murmured. We're safe here for now. Sleep and we'll figure out our next steps when you wake. Sarah wanted to ask what came next, wanted to know what they would do now that they were mated, but exhaustion was pulling her under like a tide. She fell asleep in her mate's arms, the bond humming contentedly between them. And for the first time since her rejection, Sarah felt something that had been missing for so long, she'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Hope. Power thrummed beneath Sarah's skin as she woke a sensation so different from the desperate heat that it startled her fully awake. This wasn't biology. This was something ancient, divine, waiting. Dawn light filtered through cracks in the cave entrance, painting Dante's face in gold. He sat against the wall, already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read through the bond's new intensity. Something's different, Sarah said, sitting up and staring at her hands. They looked the same but felt foreign, like they belonged to someone stronger. I feel, she struggled for words. Powerful, Dante supplied, moving closer. Yes. Sarah flexed her fingers, watching muscles move under pale skin. Like something inside me was sleeping my entire life, and now it's awake, aware, strong. The mate bond pulsed golden in her chest, carrying not just Dante's emotions, but something more. A resonance, like her soul had gained new frequencies overnight. Your wolf, Dante said, his voice carrying certainty, or whatever your wolf truly is, it's finally ready to emerge. Dante's expression sharpened with interest. Your wolf? Maybe. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Sarah closed her eyes, reaching inward for the part of herself that had always been dormant. And for the first time in 23 years, something reached back. A presence, massive and ancient and utterly certain of its own strength. Sarah's eyes flew open. There's something there. My wolf, I think. But it feels different than I expected. Bigger. The mate bond can trigger dormant abilities, Dante said, moving closer. Especially in omegas with unusual bloodlines. You keep saying that, unusual bloodlines. What do you mean? Dante was quiet for a moment, clearly choosing his words carefully. When I scent marked you yesterday, I noticed something. Your scent under the heat pheromones. It's not quite like any omega I've encountered before. Because I'm defective. No. His voice was firm. Not defective. Different, special. There are stories in the old texts about omegas marked by the moon goddess herself. They're called Luna Blessed. 1 in 1,000 generations, if that. They have abilities that transcend normal omega limitations. Sarah's heart was racing. What kind of abilities? The texts are vague, but they mention healing, enhanced strength, the ability to channel divine light, and they all share one physical characteristic. Dante reached out to touch her white hair, letting the strands slide through his fingers. They're marked by the absence of color. Albinism isn't a defect, Sarah. It's a sign. That's impossible. I'm nobody, just a rejected Omega who can't even shift properly. Can't you? You? Dante's amber eyes gleamed with challenge. Have you tried since we bonded? Sarah hadn't even thought to try. Shifting had always been impossible for her, a source of shame and frustration. But now with the mate bond singing in her chest and that ancient presence stirring inside her, she wondered. Try now, Dante encouraged. Reach for your wolf. Let's see what happens. Sarah closed her eyes again, sinking into that place inside herself where her wolf waited. And this time, instead of silence and emptiness, she felt power respond. The shift happened faster than she'd ever imagined possible. One moment she was human, the next she was standing on four legs, seeing the world through wolf eyes for the very first time in her life. Dante made a sound of shock. Sarah looked down at herself and understood why. She wasn't a small Omega wolf like she should have been. She was massive, easily as large as an alpha, maybe larger. And her fur gleamed pure silver in the dawn light filtering through the cave. Not white or gray. True metallic silver that seemed to glow with its own inner radiance. Moon and stars, Dante breathed. You're not just Luna Blessed Sarah. You're something more. Something the text barely mentioned because it's so rare. Sarah shifted back to human form, the transformation as easy as breathing. What am I? I think you're a true Luna, the goddess's direct champion. The texts say they appear once every 10,000 years in times of great need. Dante's hand cupped her face, his expression awed. Your ex-mate didn't just reject an Omega. He rejected the rarest gift the goddess could bestow. Sarah's mind was reeling. This couldn't be real. She was nobody, nothing. The cursed one that even her own pack had cast out. But the power humming beneath her skin said otherwise. Why now, she asked. Why didn't this awaken before dawn? Because you needed your true mate to unlock it, Dante explained. The bond acts as a key. Without it, the power stays dormant, hidden, waiting. So Gavin rejecting me was actually the best thing that ever happened to you, Dante finished. If he'd accepted the bond, your power might never have awakened. You would have spent your life as a regular Omega, never knowing what you could have been. The irony was almost too much to process. The rejection that had shattered her world had actually saved her from a life of mediocrity. Sarah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Before she could decide, a sound from outside the cave made both of them freeze. Footsteps, multiple sets, and voices raised in harsh laughter. Rogues, Dante's expression went cold and deadly. He moved to the weapons stacked along the cave wall, retrieving two wicked-looking knives. How many? Sarah whispered. 6, Dante said after a moment of listening. Maybe more. They must have tracked the blood from last night's fight. What do? We fight. Dante pressed one knife into her hand. Your wolf is awake now. Use it. Don't hold back. The cave entrance exploded inward before Sarah could respond. Rogues poured through the opening eyes, gleaming with violence and hunger. Dante met the first 3 with lethal efficiency, his blades flashing silver in the dim light. Blood sprayed across the cave floor. But 3 more rogues were coming straight for Sarah. Time seemed to slow. She could see their teeth bared in cruel grins. Could smell their anticipation of what they planned to do to the Omega they'd cornered. And something inside Sarah said no. She shifted without conscious thought. Her massive silver wolf erupting into existence with a growl that shook the cave walls. The lead rogue actually stumbled backward in shock. Sarah didn't give him time to recover. She lunged, powerful jaws closing around his throat. One shake, the sickening crack of vertebrae breaking. He fell. The second rogue tried to shift, but Sarah was faster. She slammed into him with enough force to shatter ribs, her weight and momentum driving him into the stone wall. The third rogue turned to run. Sarah hunted him down with terrifying speed, her newly awakened instincts guiding every movement. She'd never fought before, had never trained, but her wolf knew exactly what to do. Within seconds, all 3 rogues lay dead or dying. Sarah turned to help Dante, but he'd already finished his opponents. He stood in the center of the carnage, breathing hard, covered in blood that wasn't his own. His eyes met hers across the cave, and through the bond, she felt his awe mixing with pride. That's my Luna, he said quietly, reverently. The goddess chose well. Deadly, he said, voice filled with satisfaction. My Omega is absolutely deadly. A smile curved his lips, feral and approving. They never saw you coming. But there was no time to process the compliment. More sounds from outside. More rogues drawn by the sounds of fighting. There are too many, Dante said. We need to move, now. Sarah shifted back to human form, ignoring her nakedness as she grabbed her clothes. They dressed in seconds, gathering only what they could carry. Dante triggered the mechanism to open the cave entrance. Stay close to me. We run north. Don't stop for anything. They burst out of the cave into morning sunlight. Sarah's newly awakened senses immediately picked up the threats surrounding them. 8 rogues closing in from the south, 4 more from the east, all converging on their position. Too many to fight, Dante confirmed. Run. They ran. Sarah's wolf lent her speed she'd never possessed before. She kept pace with Dante easily, both of them moving through the forest with practiced grace. The rogues gave chase, howling with bloodlust. But Sarah and Dante had a head start in superior motivation. They pushed north through increasingly rough terrain, using every trick Dante knew to throw off pursuit. They crossed streams to hide their scent, scrambled over rocky outcroppings that wouldn't hold tracks, doubled back twice to confuse the trail. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 40 minutes, the sounds of pursuit faded behind them. Dante slowed to a stop in a small clearing, listening intently. I think we lost them. Sarah collapsed against a tree, breathing hard. Why are there so many? Why are they hunting us this aggressively? Because someone hired them to, Dante said grimly. This isn't random, Sarah. They're being directed. By who? That's what I intend to find out. Dante's expression was hard. But first we need to get you somewhere safe. My contacts in the Northern Territories can offer protection while I continue investigating. Northern Territories, how far is that? 2 days' travel if we push hard, 3 if we're careful. Dante moved to her side, his hand gentle on her shoulder despite the violence they'd just survived. Can you make it? I don't have much choice, do I? Something that might have been a smile flickered across Dante's face. No, I suppose not. They continued north at a more sustainable pace. Dante led them through parts of the forest Sarah had never seen following paths. Only he seemed to know existed. As they traveled, he taught her how to move silently through underbrush, how to read tracks and sign, how to identify which plants were safe to eat and which would poison her, how to find water even when no stream was visible, and perhaps most importantly, how to control her newly awakened wolf. Don't fight the shift, Dante instructed during one of their rest breaks. Let it flow through you. Your wolf isn't separate from you. It's part of who you are. Sarah practiced shifting back and forth until the transformation became as natural as breathing. Each time her massive silver wolf emerged with that same inner glow. Your coloring is going to draw attention, Dante warned. Silver wolves are legend. Most wolves have never seen one outside of ancient tapestries. Is that bad? It depends on who sees you. Dante's expression was thoughtful. Some will revere you as blessed. Others will fear you as a threat to the natural order. And a few will want to use your power for their own purposes. What do you think? I think you're exactly what the goddess intended you to be. Dante pulled her close, his lips brushing her forehead. And I think anyone who tries to harm you will have to go through me first. The mate bond hummed with his fierce protectiveness. Sarah leaned into his strength, grateful beyond words that the goddess had given her this male. They made camp that first night in a dense copse of trees that offered both concealment and a clear view of their surroundings. Dante built a small fire, keeping it low to minimize smoke. As they ate from their supplies, Sarah finally asked the question that had been bothering her since the cave. When I killed those rogues, I should feel guilty, shouldn't I? Should feel horror at taking lives. But I don't. I feel nothing except satisfaction that they're dead and can't hurt anyone else. That's your wolf, Dante explained. Wolves don't have human morality about killing. When you're threatened, when your mate is threatened, eliminating the threat is natural. Right? The guilt humans feel doesn't apply. Does that make me a monster? No. Dante's voice was firm. It makes you a wolf. We're predators, Sarah. It's in our nature. The key is controlling when and why we kill. Those rogues would have raped you, tortured you, and killed you without a moment's hesitation. You defended yourself. That's not monstrous. That's survival. Sarah wanted to believe him, wanted to accept that the violence inside her wasn't wrong. The mate bond carried his certainty, his absolute conviction that she'd done nothing shameful. Slowly, she let herself accept it. Tell me about the Northern Territories, she said, changing the subject. What should I expect? It's an alliance of 3 smaller packs, Dante explained. They banded together for mutual protection after a series of rogue attacks 5 years ago. The lead alpha is named Kieran Blackridge. I served with him years ago when we were both young warriors. He's honorable, fair. If anyone can offer you sanctuary, it's him. Will he accept me? An Omega with no pack? He'll accept you because you're my mate, Dante said. And because once he sees what you are, he'll recognize the value of having a Luna blessed in the alliance. They finished eating in comfortable silence. Dante took first watch while Sarah tried to sleep, but rest was elusive. Every sound made her wolf rise close to the surface, alert for threats. She could feel Dante through the bond, his vigilance matching her own. Finally, she gave up on sleep and moved to sit beside him. "Can't rest?" he asked softly. "Too much has happened. Too much has changed. 2 days ago, I was nobody. Now I'm apparently some legendary Luna-blessed wolf that appears once every 10,000 years." Sarah shook her head. "How am I supposed to process that?" "One moment at a time," Dante said. You don't have to understand everything right now. Just focus on surviving, on getting stronger, on learning to control your power. Understanding can come later." "Is that what you did after your sister died?" Pain flickered across Dante's face. "After Emma died, I focused on one thing: finding her killers and making them pay. Everything else, all the grief and rage and guilt, I shoved into a box and locked it away. It wasn't healthy, but it kept me functional." "Do you regret it?" "I regret that I couldn't save her, that I was too late." Dante's hands clenched into fists. "But I don't regret hunting down the rogues responsible, and I won't stop until I find whoever hired them. Even now that we're bonded, even though that puts me at risk," Dante turned to face her fully. "You deserve to know something. Before I found you, before the bond, I was operating on pure vengeance. I didn't care if I lived or died as long as I took the bastards down with me. But now," he cupped her face in both hands, "now I have something to live for, someone to protect. The mission hasn't changed, but my priorities have. Your safety comes first, always. If I have to choose between revenge and keeping you alive, I choose you every single time." The fierce devotion in his voice made Sarah's throat tight with emotion. "I love you," she heard herself saying. "Is that crazy? We've known each other less than 2 days, but I love you, Dante Ashford." "It's not crazy." Dante's smile was tender. "It's the mate bond. And I love you too, Sarah Whitlock. More than I thought I could love anyone." He kissed her, then soft and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Dante insisted she try to sleep again. "We have a long day tomorrow. You need rest." This time, curled against his side, with his arm around her shoulders, Sarah managed to drift off. She woke to Dante shaking her shoulder urgently. "We have company." Sarah was on her feet instantly, all traces of sleep vanishing. "Rogues?" "I don't think so." Dante's expression was tense but not alarmed. "3 wolves approaching from the north, moving openly, not trying to hide, and one of them is sending out calming pheromones. Alpha Command trying to signal peaceful intentions." "Do we run?" "No, if they wanted to ambush us, they wouldn't announce themselves." Dante moved to stand between Sarah and the approaching wolves. "But stay behind me just in case." 3 massive wolves emerged from the tree line, all in animal form, all watching them with intelligent eyes. The largest, a dark gray wolf with silver markings, shifted to human form. The male who emerged was powerfully built, perhaps 40 years old, with gray threaded through his dark hair and scars marking his chest and arms. His eyes were sharp and assessing. "Dante Ashford," the male said, his voice carrying the weight of alpha authority. "I thought I smelled your scent in my territory. You're a long way from Western Ridge." "Kieran," Dante relaxed fractionally. "I would have sent word before entering your lands, but circumstances didn't allow for courtesy." Kieran's eyes shifted to Sarah, and she saw them widen slightly at her appearance. "And who is your companion?" "My mate." Dante's voice carried a clear warning. "Sarah Whitlock, recently bonded. Bonded to a female with coloring I've only seen in ancient artwork." Kieran's gaze was intense but not threatening. "May I ask about your lineage, Sarah Whitlock?" Before Sarah could answer, one of the other wolves shifted. A female, perhaps 50, with kind eyes and graying brown hair. The moment she saw Sarah fully, she gasped, then dropped to one knee. "Luna blessed," the female breathed. "The goddess has sent us a true Luna." Kieran's expression shifted from curious to shocked. "Are you certain, Mira?" "Look at her, Alpha. The silver hair, the pale skin, the power radiating from her even now. She bears all the marks." Mira's voice shook with awe. "I've studied the ancient texts my entire life. I know the signs." The third wolf shifted now. A younger male, maybe 30, his expression skeptical. "The Luna blessed are myths, stories we tell children." "Not myths," Mira insisted. "History. And she's standing right in front of you, Garrett." Kieran studied Sarah for a long moment. Then he too lowered himself to one knee. "If what Mira says is true, then we are honored by your presence in Northern Territory lands, Luna. You and your mate are welcome here. We offer protection, sanctuary, and whatever resources you require." Sarah looked at Dante, uncertain how to respond. Through the bond, she felt his surprise mixed with satisfaction. This was better than he'd hoped for. Thank you, Sarah said carefully. We accept your offer of sanctuary, though I'm not sure I deserve the title Luna. I only discovered my wolf 2 days ago. All the more reason you need guidance, Mira said, rising from her knee. Training, support. If you truly are what I believe you are, your power will continue to manifest. You'll need to learn control before it overwhelms you. How far to your pack lands? Dante asked Kieran. Half a day at a steady pace will escort you. Kieran's expression turned serious. But I need to know what brings you to my territory, Dante. The last I heard, you'd gone rogue hunting the bastards who destroyed Western Ridge. Still hunting them, Dante confirmed. And they're still hunting us. We killed 9 rogues in the past 2 days. More might be following. Kieran's jaw tightened. Then we need to move quickly. If there's a rogue pack operating in my territory, I want to know about it. They set off north immediately. Mira walked beside Sarah, asking questions about her background, her awakening the bond with Dante. Sarah answered as best she could, still processing the fact that these strangers had recognized what she was before she'd even fully accepted it herself. The texts say Luna blessed only awakened through true mate bonds, Mira explained as they walked. Your previous rejection, as painful as it must have been, was the goddess's way of protecting your power, saving it for the right mate. Dante said something similar. He's wise, Mira smiled. And from what I can sense through your bond, he's a good male, strong, honorable, exactly the kind of alpha a Luna needs. They reached the Northern Territory packlands by early afternoon. Sarah's first glimpse of the compound took her breath away. Unlike Silver Mist's scattered cabins, the Northern Alliance had built a proper settlement. Sturdy log buildings arranged in concentric circles around a central hall. Defensive walls marking the perimeter. Guard towers at strategic points. This was a pack prepared for war. Wolves stopped what they were doing to stare as their group entered. Sarah heard the whispers starting, saw the looks of shock and awe as people recognized her unusual coloring. Kieran led them to the central hall, a massive structure that could easily hold 200 wolves. Inside, a council table dominated the space. Maps covered the walls. Weapons hung in racks. Mira, gather the elders, Kieran commanded. I want them to examine Sarah and confirm your assessment. Garrett, double the perimeter guards. If rogues are operating nearby, I want advance warning. Both wolves hurried to obey. Kieran turned to Dante and Sarah. You'll have quarters in the guest wing. Food, clothing, whatever you need. But first, I need to understand the full situation. How many rogues are we talking about? How organized are they, and what do they want? Dante spent the next hour explaining everything. The network of rogue packs, the 12 destroyed settlements, the evidence of coordination and funding. His theory that someone powerful was clearing out small packs to claim their territory. Kieran's expression grew grimmer with every word. This is worse than I thought, he said finally. If you're right, if someone is orchestrating this, then every small pack in North America is at risk. Including the Northern Alliance, Dante agreed. Then we need to pool our resources, share information, find this bastard before more packs are destroyed. Kieran looked at Sarah. And we need to protect the Luna Blessed. If word gets out that a true Luna has awakened, every power-hungry alpha on the continent will either want to claim her or kill her. She's already claimed, Dante said, his voice carrying clear threat, and anyone who tries to harm her answers to me. Easy, brother. Kieran raised his hands placatingly. I'm not threatening your mate. I'm offering alliance, protection. The Northern Territories will stand with you against whoever is behind these attacks. Before Dante could respond, the hall doors burst open. Mira rushed in, her face pale. Alpha, we have a problem. Scouts just reported a large force approaching from the south. Rogues, at least 30 of them. And they're not hiding. They're marching straight for our lands like an army. Kieran was on his feet instantly. How long until they reach the perimeter? Less than an hour. Sound the alarm. Full defensive positions. Get the children and elderly to the safe rooms. Kieran's alpha command rang through the hall. This is not a drill. We're under attack. Sarah felt ice flood her veins. 30 rogues. Coming here. Coming for them. Coming for her. Dante's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Through the bond, she felt his determination, his absolute refusal to let anything happen to her. Let them come, he said quietly. They're about to learn what it costs to hunt a Luna Blessed and her mate. Sarah looked at her hands, felt the power humming just beneath her skin, waiting to be unleashed. The rogues wanted war, then war they would get. And Sarah Whitlock, the rejected Omega, who'd been called cursed and defective her entire life, was about to show them exactly what the Moon Goddess's champion could do. The Northern Territory compound transformed into a fortress within minutes. Warriors took positions along the defensive walls. Archers climbed the guard towers. The elderly and children disappeared into reinforced safe rooms beneath the central hall. Sarah stood in the courtyard watching the organized chaos with growing determination. These wolves were preparing to defend their home against an army that had come hunting for her. She wouldn't let them fight alone. "Sarah, you need to get to the safe rooms." Dante set his hand on her shoulder. "No," her voice was firm. "I won't hide while others die protecting me. You're too valuable to risk." "I'm not valuable, I'm powerful." Sarah turned to face him, her eyes meeting his. "There's a difference, and it's time I learned what this power can actually do." Through the bond, Dante felt her resolve, felt the Luna strength rising inside her like a tide. He wanted to argue, wanted to lock her away somewhere safe, but he also understood that you couldn't cage a force of nature, and that's what Sarah was becoming. "Stay close to me," he finally said. "We fight together." Kieran approached, already shifted to his massive gray wolf form. He shifted back long enough to speak. "They're here, 32 rogues, all in wolf form, moving in organized formation like a military unit." His expression was grim. "This isn't a random attack. Someone trained them." "Then let's show them what trained wolves face when they attack the wrong pack," Dante said. The rogues hit the perimeter wall like a wave of teeth and fury, but the Northern Territory wolves were ready. Arrows flew from the guard towers, taking down 3 rogues before they even reached the walls. Warriors met the breach with coordinated precision, forming defensive lines that held against the initial assault. Sarah shifted to her massive silver wolf power flooding through her veins. Beside her, Dante's black wolf radiated lethal intent. Together they entered the battle. The moment Sarah appeared on the wall, every rogue seemed to sense what she was. They turned toward her like moths to flame, abandoning their attacks on other wolves to converge on the Luna Blessed. Exactly what Sarah had hoped for. She leaped from the wall directly into the center of the rogue formation. A dozen wolves swarmed her immediately, but Sarah wasn't the weak Omega they expected. Power exploded from her body in a wave of silver light. The rogues closest to her were thrown backwards, stunned and disoriented. Sarah tore through them with devastating efficiency, her massive jaws crushing bone and tearing flesh. Dante fought beside her, their movements synchronized through the mate bond. When she attacked left, he defended right. When he pressed forward, she covered his flank. They moved like a single entity with 2 bodies. The battle raged for minutes that felt like hours. Blood soaked the ground. Bodies fell on both sides. But slowly the tide began to turn. The Northern Territory wolves were fighting for their home, their families, their very survival. The rogues were mercenaries with no real loyalty to each other. When 10 of their number had fallen, the remaining rogues began to break. Sarah focused her power, letting the divine light build inside her chest. Then she released it in a brilliant flash that lit up the entire compound like a second sun. Every rogue still standing was frozen in place, overwhelmed by the goddess's presence channeled through her Luna champion. Kieran's warriors moved among them, methodically ending the threat with swift efficiency. Within minutes it was over. 32 rogues had attacked. None would leave alive. Sarah shifted back to human form, breathing hard, covered in blood that wasn't all her own. Around her Northern Territory, wolves were doing the same, checking on wounded, accounting for their own. 4 warriors had fallen defending the compound. 15 more were injured, some seriously, but they had survived, had won against overwhelming odds. And every wolf in the compound knew why. One by one, the Northern Territory warriors turned to face Sarah. Then, starting with Kieran and spreading through the assembled wolves like a wave, they lowered themselves to one knee. "Luna," Kieran said, his voice carrying across the courtyard, "the Northern Alliance owes you a debt that can never be repaid. You could have hidden, could have let us fight alone. Instead, you stood with us, led the battle, turned the tide." Sarah looked at the kneeling wolves, overwhelmed by the weight of their respect. "I only did what anyone would." "No," Mira interrupted gently, she too on one knee. "What you did is what a true Luna does. You protected your pack. Even though we're not your pack by blood, you claimed us through action, through sacrifice, through power wielded in service of others." Through the bond, Sarah felt Dante's fierce pride, felt his absolute certainty that she was exactly what these wolves needed. "Rise," Sarah said softly. "We won this battle together. The victory belongs to all of us." The wolves stood, but their eyes still held that same reverence. Sarah knew in that moment that her life had changed irrevocably. She would never again be just an Omega. Never again be overlooked or dismissed. She was Luna now, whether she felt ready or not. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the balcony of the Northern Alliance's Central Hall, her hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly where twin heartbeats fluttered. The compound below bustled with activity, wolves going about their daily routines, children playing, warriors training. The rhythms of pack life that had become as familiar to her as breathing. So much had changed since that first battle. The Northern Alliance had grown. Survivors from 5 other packs destroyed by rogues had sought refuge here, drawn by stories of the Luna Blessed who protected her own. The compound had expanded to accommodate them. New buildings, new walls, new beginnings, and the rogue attacks had stopped completely. Whatever mastermind had been orchestrating them had apparently decided that a pack protected by a true Luna wasn't worth the cost. Dante emerged onto the balcony behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, one hand joining hers on their growing children. Our heirs, he murmured against her ear. The healers confirmed it this morning. One of each, a son and a daughter. Sarah leaned back into his warmth, the mate bond humming with shared contentment. Future Alpha and future Luna, maybe. Maybe. Or maybe they'll forge their own paths. Dante kissed her temple. Either way, they'll know they're loved, wanted, valued. Unlike how Sarah had grown up, she thought of Grandmother Rose sometimes. Wondered if her grandmother was still alive, still waiting in that cabin at Silver Mist's edge. Wondered if Rose had known all along what Sarah would become. A figure approached across the courtyard. Kieran, his expression troubled. We have a visitor, he called up to them. Someone asking for you, specifically Sarah. Says he's from Silver Mist Pack. Sarah's heart clenched. Who? He says his name is Gavin Thorne. Says he has information you need to hear. Dante's arms tightened around her protectively. Through the bond, she felt his instant aggression at the mention of her former mate. Do you want me to send him away? Kieran asked. Sarah was tempted, wanted nothing more than to forget Gavin even existed. But curiosity won out. No, I'll see him, but Dante stays with me. They met in the central hall. Gavin stood in the center of the room, flanked by 2 Northern Alliance guards. He looked thinner than Sarah remembered. Haunted. The confident Alpha heir was gone, replaced by someone who'd seen too much suffering. His eyes widened when he saw Sarah, saw her pregnant belly, saw the Luna authority radiating from her like light. Sarah, he breathed. The stories were true. You're really Luna blessed, she finished coolly. Yes, the defective Omega you rejected turned out to be the goddess's champion. Ironic, isn't it? Gavin flinched like she'd struck him. I was wrong about everything. I came to tell you that, and to warn you. Warn me about what? Silver Mist Pack is gone. Gavin's voice broke. 3 months ago, rogues attacked at dawn. We tried to fight, but there were too many. Over 100 of them. Sarah felt ice flood her veins. Grandmother Rose, dead, along with almost everyone else. Gavin's eyes were haunted. I survived because I was on border patrol. By the time I got back, it was over. The compound was burning. Bodies everywhere. Sarah's knees went weak. Dante caught her, holding her upright, while grief crashed through the bond. I'm sorry, Gavin continued. Your grandmother fought to protect the children until the very end. She died a hero. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. Rose had been the only family she'd had, the only one who'd ever truly loved her. And now she was gone. Sarah's grief threatened to overwhelm her, but Gavin's next words cut through the pain. There's more you need to know, he said, his voice heavy, about who ordered the attacks, about why so many packs had to die. Dante's arms tightened around Sarah protectively. Explain. The rogues who destroyed Silver Mist before they burned everything. I heard them talking, bragging. Gavin's hands clenched into fists. They mentioned a name, Marcus Venturo. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kieran's expression went deadly cold. The mining magnate. You know him? Sarah asked. Every Alpha in North America knows him, Kieran said grimly. Owns Venturo Mining Corporation, one of the largest mineral extraction companies on the continent. He's been trying to expand operations into packed territories for decades, but the Continental Council kept blocking him. Our lands are protected under the ancient accords. We're protected, Gavin corrected bitterly. With 12 packs completely destroyed, their territories became unclaimed land under human law. Venturo bought the mineral rights for almost nothing from the few survivors who had legal claim. Perfectly legal. No one could prove the attacks were connected to him. Sarah felt ice flood her veins, followed by white-hot fury. He orchestrated genocide. Hundreds of wolves murdered children, elders, pregnant mothers, all so he could mine their lands. Emma, Dante said, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying enough rage to make the air vibrate. My sister, her unborn child. Everyone at Western Ridge. They died for profit. The Continental Council opened an official investigation 2 weeks ago, Kieran said. With Gavin's testimony about what he overheard, evidence from the other destroyed packs, and he looked at Sarah with meaning. The backing of a Luna blessed, they finally had enough political power to move against someone that wealthy and connected. What happened? Sarah demanded. Venturo's empire is crumbling, Kieran said with dark satisfaction. The council seized all properties purchased from destroyed pack lands, froze his assets, and yesterday they handed down their verdict. He paused, letting the weight of it build. Marcus Venturo has been declared enemy of all packs. He's been stripped of his wealth, his businesses, his status, everything. And he's been exiled from all pack territories across North America under penalty of death. If he ever sets foot on pack land again, any wolf has the right to execute him on sight. Sarah felt Dante's savage satisfaction through the bond mixing with her own. It wasn't perfect justice. It wouldn't bring back the dead, wouldn't give Dante his sister back, or return grandmother Rose to life, but it would prevent future massacres, would ensure no other pack suffered the same fate. He'll spend the rest of his miserable human life looking over his shoulder, Gavin said quietly, knowing that hundreds of wolves would celebrate his death. That's something. Dante nodded slowly, his fury banking to cold resolve. It's not enough, but it's something. There's more, Gavin said, pulling himself together. Before your grandmother died, she gave me something. Made me promise you to find you and deliver it. He pulled a worn journal from his pack. Sarah recognized it immediately. There's more, Gavin said quietly. Before she died, your grandmother gave me something, made me promise to find you and deliver it. Sarah took it with shaking hands. She said you'd understand when you read it, Gavin finished, said it would explain everything. Sarah opened the journal to the first page. Her grandmother's handwriting stared back at her. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then I've passed beyond the veil and you've discovered what you truly are. Luna blessed, true champion of the goddess. The power that runs in your veins is the same power that flowed through your mother's veins and your grandmother's before her. We are an unbroken line of Luna blessed, stretching back 10,000 years. Each generation, one of us awakens. Each generation, we serve the goddess's purpose. Your mother died protecting you from rogues who'd come hunting specifically for Luna-blessed children. I've spent 23 years hiding you, keeping your power dormant, waiting for the right moment. I knew Gavin would reject you, knew it would hurt, but I also knew it would set you free to find your true mate, the one strong enough to stand beside a Luna. Everything that's happened has been the goddess's plan. Trust in her. Trust in yourself, and know that even though I'm gone, I love you more than words can say. You were never cursed, my darling girl. You were always blessed. With all my love, Grandmother Rose. Sarah clutched the journal to her chest, sobbing openly now. Dante held her while she grieved his strength, the only thing keeping her from collapsing. When she could finally speak, she looked at Gavin through tear-blurred eyes. Thank you for bringing this to me, for honoring her final wish. Oh, Gavin nodded. It's the least I could do after everything I took from you. You didn't take anything, Sarah said quietly. You freed me to become who I was always meant to be. The goddess works in mysterious ways. Gavin's eyes were full of regret and self-recrimination. But Sarah felt nothing for him, not anger, not satisfaction at his suffering, just emptiness where her feelings for him used to be. The Northern Alliance offers you sanctuary if you want it, Kieran said. You're a wolf without a pack. You're welcome here. Thank you, Gavin said, but I don't deserve sanctuary. I'm going to keep hunting rogues, keep fighting. Try to make amends for my blindness. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. You were right, Sarah, about everything. And I was a fool. The goddess gave me a gift beyond measure, and I threw it away. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Then he was gone. Sarah watched him go, feeling the chapter of her old life finally close. She was no longer the rejected Omega from Silver Mist Pack. She was Sarah Ashford, Luna blessed, mate to Dante, mother of the next generation, leader of a pack built from the ashes of destruction. 6 months ago, she'd lost everything. Today, she had everything that mattered. Dante's arms tightened around her as their children kicked inside her belly. Through the bond, she felt his unwavering love, his absolute devotion, his pride in the female she'd become. Are you okay? He asked softly. Sarah looked out over the compound, saw her pack thriving, saw children playing safely, saw a future full of hope instead of despair. Yes, she said, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She placed both hands over her belly, feeling her twins respond to their mother's touch. From rejected and exiled to Luna and mother of future alphas. From cursed to blessed, from broken to whole. The goddess worked in mysterious ways indeed, and Sarah Ashford, true Luna of the Northern Alliance, was just getting started.